In light of the recent emerging market slowdown, why should we still be interested in emerging markets?
Emerging markets account for half of global GDP, even with the slowdown, and perhaps more importantly, they're home to 85% of the world's population. So they'll remain an important driver of global growth.
Why beyond BRIC?
The BRICS are perhaps the epitome of the emerging market story, but they're not the be-all and end-all. Frontier markets are faster growing, and the BRICS may dominate in terms of overall size, but they don't even appear in a ranking of the world's 5 fastest growing emerging markets, or even the 10 fastest growing.
What makes the middle class such an important consumer group?
Well, a middle class income is an indicator of sufficient spending power to go beyond the bare essentials. And for many multinational companies, the middle classes are their main target consumer group. Many emerging market middle classes have the spending power to spend on luxuries and non-essentials for the first time, so they represent an exciting opportunity for multinational companies.
To successfully launch new products and attract middle-class consumers, firms need to understand their markets at a local level, including consumers' attitudes and habits.
Do I need an entirely new marketing strategy for the middle class in emerging markets? Weren't they just like the US and European markets 10, 20, even 30 years ago?
No, not at all, really. So many of the things that businesses take for granted in developed markets, such as road infrastructure, large-scale retailers with the ability to purchase large volumes of stock, just aren't there in emerging markets.
And even the consumer groups are different in emerging markets. So many of the middle classes in emerging markets are fairly new to discretionary purchasing. So they're still learning about use of credit and financial planning. On the flip side, we also see a heavier emphasis on savings and spending on education in emerging markets among the middle class. So that means that in markets like the US, you're used to only having one opponent, other consumer goods and services firms, to gain share of wallet. While in emerging markets, you have opponents on two sides. You have other consumer goods and services firms on the one side, and then on the other side, you have fiscal conservatism, which is often deeply culturally rooted. We've seen this in China, but it's true in other emerging markets as well.
In addition to competing for a potentially smaller share of wallet, what else should firms know about courting the middle class in emerging markets?
Every market is different. A one-size-fits-all approach will not do. For instance, Latin American consumers are much less home-oriented than Asia-Pacific consumers, which has implications for where they choose to spend and spend more. In addition, while stainless steel appliances are all of the rage in the US and its Latin American neighbors, in other parts of the world, in emerging markets, middle-class consumers are much more interested in well-designed, energy-efficient appliances.
Eileen is exactly right, and they also need to understand the business environment and local issues because emerging markets aren't created equal.